good afternoon. I'm Nachiket Barve. I'm a fashion designer and a costume designer. And I'm so privileged to be here. It's wonderful to be at this event, to look at all of you guys and have hopefully a very engaging and interesting session. Coming to the campus today was such an interesting experience for me because I saw all of you in your, medical overcoats and let's take it back to the beginning. My talk is called Fashioning the Future. And while we get on to that, the future cannot exist without the past. And my origins were absolutely nothing to do with fashion at all. Why I said I felt at home when I came to the campus is because I come from a family of doctors. My parents are doctors, my sister's a doctor, my brother-in-law is a doctor. So dinner table conversation at our home has nothing to do with clothes and more to do with abscesses and patients' problems. So this felt very much like like a homecoming of sorts. A lot of people ask me saying, how did you become a designer? And people say, oh, did you grow up with your mother and her fancy saris, or was that a point of inspiration? And I'm pretty sure the nurse dropped me on a head right after birth because there cannot be any other explanation for kind of going off on a tangent and doing what I do. I love clothes. I think I have the best job in the world, after doctors perhaps, because especially during the time when we had the COVID pandemic, it was a time when nobody needed new clothes, and I kept asking myself, saying, what is the purpose of what I do? Does this job have any meaning? Nobody's going out, nobody's going to parties, nobody has a requirement for anything new. Are we just doing frivolous stuff? What is it that I'm really doing? And that's when it struck me, like why I say I have the best job in the world, because my job is to bring joy to people's lives. I mean, all of you, the lovely ladies wearing saris in the audience today, you probably picked a color because it felt like this will make me look my best, or it will make me put me in a good mood. So clothes and fashion has the power to shape our minds and shape how we feel, not only about ourselves but also the world at large. And that is just one of the many privileges. It's also a great responsibility because fashion doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? I mean, the clothes that you wear or the clothes that you see celebrities wear or anybody else, they don't just get made in a machine. It's not 3D printing. Fashion is, as an industry, is a relatively new industry, not only for India but for the world as well. Maybe for the world it's 150, 140 years old. For India it's hardly 40 years old. So it's a very, very nascent and a new industry compared to all the other industries which have existed for so long. Fashion in its own sense may not have existed, but we've always had a a tradition of style, of textiles, of craftsmanship, of making things with your hands that has preceded fashion by centuries. I mean, humans as people enjoy adornment. So if you look at even the old sculptures, there's always been, whether they've been putting seeds and bark or flowers on themselves, we've always enjoyed the act of adornment and expressing ourselves and our individuality through what we wear. What I do is really catalyze that and help somebody look and feel their best. But why the responsibility? The responsibility is from something else, because coming back to the thing of 3D printing of clothes versus real making of clothes, what I as a designer specialize in is forming a bridge between the past and the present. So the way, say, Indian rich heritage of traditions, textiles has happened for centuries. Maybe there's a certain embroidery which has happened a certain way. Maybe there's an expression a certain way. How do you take it to the future? How do you make it modern? I mean, these are questions that we all ask ourselves as people. I mean, we live in a world where you're on the internet, all of you are browsing on your phones. Why do clothes have to look like they are made the same way that they were made 400 years ago? Why do you necessarily, maybe you want to, but do you really need to, is there a modern way of looking at fashion, and what repercussions does it have? I'll just take you through a few images just to kind of illustrate the point. I started, that's my first collection on the left. And it always was about taking Indian craftsmanship to the world. So we have the best techniques, the best hands. Everything that you see has been made by human hands. And there cannot be a bigger privilege than that. Today, in a world where everything is so automated, mechanical, mass produced, the fact that somebody has individually created something remains the truest luxury of that, because they put a certain bit of themselves into their creations. No machine or AI can replicate that. All of you have been following the art trend that has been happening, and it looks so soulless and generic because you're taking away the human factor out of things. I mean, what makes all of our interactions fantastic and spectacular is the fact that we engage as humans. So this is just an illustration of some of the work that we do. I mean, I believe firmly that the clothes we do are are created with the art of storytelling. I mean, there is an inspiration, there is a process. Otherwise, the world has too many clothes. Do we need more? Not really. But do we want more? Perhaps. So there is something inspired by black and white photography. There is something inspired by the Maori tribe of New Zealand. There is something inspired by, the tulip mania phenomenon of Amsterdam. So all of these, like say for example, the cape that you're seeing on the left has taken something like 3,200 hours of hand embroidery to create. So it is really, and so when I talk about 3,200 hours of hand embroidery, can you imagine the number of people who have sat and done this? Can you imagine the level of skill that has gone into it? And why I feel responsible is because when we promote Indian craft and art, it's not only those people who have worked, say maybe 40 crafts people have worked on this for a month, but their families are also benefiting. They are able to educate their children, they are able to pass on those things because there is patronage for this craft. Next, please. What we also do is, fashion, I firmly believe fashion cannot exist in a museum. It is not only for a museum, it's to be worn and living your life in. What you see here is how to incorporate the same skill and the same technique and the same craftsmanship into everyday living. So this is an effort to kind of democratize fashion where you make craft accessible. I firmly believe India today is at the absolute juncture of blending the past and the future. We are where the action is happening right now. Never before in recent memory have we felt so confident as a nation, so assertive as a nation. I just came back from Hong Kong last night after doing a show. And what struck me as we've been taking the brand to different places in the world is the similarity between people, and more importantly, how proud it makes you to walk into a room and say you're an Indian designer today. We carry with us the hopes, the dreams, the efforts of a billion others behind us who are kind of pushing us forward with the history behind our backs. We are so confident, we are so competitive, and we are so expressive about what we do, because this is the moment where we have realized how different we are to the rest of the world. You look at areas in the world where people dress all the same way. There is nothing to do which is blending tradition and modernity. But you walk in India and you go to the market and you see women, who are rushing about their business, wearing a beautifully draped sari and a perfectly stitched blouse, maybe gajras in their hair. And you realize that all of this is an expression of Indian craft. The gajras have been handmade, the blouse has been hand stitched and perfectly fitted for that lady. The sari has been hand draped and woven still how it was done many years ago. But she's probably talking on the mobile and carrying a purse, or maybe driving a scooty. So it's this blend of who we were, who we are, and where we are going forward. I'd like to illustrate another proud moment. Why, for me, this was a very pivotal moment, because I was, won the Woolmark Prize and presented India in Paris. So I studied at NID in Ahmedabad, and I won a scholarship to study at École des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, and I lived there for a year. And I'm talking of a period about 20 years ago, 2003-4. Maybe some of you were not born then, but so, at that time I remember somebody asking me, oh, so do you go to, do you have elephants on the roads? And do you so for them it was this world of Aladdin and magic and snake charmers, and I'm like, no, we take a car and go to work. So, from then to presenting this collection, I saw the big change of how the world was looking at India. And it made me so proud to be a part of that change. One of the pivotal moments that happened in my life was when I was living in Paris, and we were all discussing something, just like a random chit chat about how people take holidays. And somebody said, my grandmother wears Madras checks and goes to the beach, And I'm like, my grandmother only wore saris, because it made me realize how Indian we really are. And why I bring this up is because today you walk into a mall and all of us are so, enamored by the idea of globalization, which is wonderful. But I think change is something, and I believe Mahatma Gandhi said this, that let the influences come into your house like air or breeze coming through, but let it not shake up your foundation. What makes us unique is who we have been, who we are, and what will keep us unique and competitive is how we infuse the world with who we are without losing ourselves. And I think that's something to keep in mind at every level that we engage in. Craft or design or business cannot engage only on the basis of patronage and loose stock. You have to, as consumers, as people who are consciously making choices with your phone, with your wallet, with how you inspire, protect, and develop and nurture Indian craftsmanship in whatever format you have. Given a choice, buying something which is mass produced, buy something artisanal. When you have a choice, buy a hand woven sari than something which is just digitally printed. Small choices will help the people who are creating and passing these traditions on protect them, because there was a time when like it was kind of hereditary. I mean, like, it was passed on from the generation. A man would learn something, his son would do it, his son would do it. It was assumed. And today the world is filled with so many choices. But what remains if we all let it go? I'll just take you through a glimpses of what makes Indian craftsmanship spectacular. And like, I mean, each of these, whether it's the hundreds or thousands of hours that have taken into it, these are things that, for me as a designer become very collaborative. They are not done something which is as a, like it's not a unilateral discussion, it's a dialogue. It's a dialogue with the karigars, they come up with ideas, there are things that they have learned through generations, even I learn from them. My consumer learns from them. So it's like a dialogue and a community which is helping further the cause of what we are trying to do. This is just, I mean, it's not so much about the people who are wearing it, but the diversity of how fashion can be inclusive. Too many times I hear of these things where people say, oh, I want to lose weight and then I'll come wear the clothes. You don't look nice enough for these clothes. No, fashion has to be inclusive. It has to make you feel the best of how you can be, no matter what your age. So you look at somebody who's in their 70s who's wearing something designed by me, and somebody who's in their 20s wearing something from me. It's about doing something that works as a sustainable solution for the person who's wearing it. I also do costume for films, and why I wanted to bring it up is craftsmanship is not something which exists in a vacuum. Like, I'll give an example of one of the movies I made, just Tanaji the Unsung Warrior. I don't know how many of you have seen it. And for me, that was a very interesting movie to do, because there was a lot of responsibility to recreating historic characters in cinema on the big screen for people to see. I'll give you an example. I mean, the outfit that you see Saif Ali Khan wearing there has got about 17 different techniques in it. So there are textiles from Bengal, Rajasthan, Varanasi, the silk route, there is leather work from Uttar Pradesh, there is so many different crafts that we worked with to kind of keep the craftsmanship alive. The saris that Kajol wore, you can see the mood board over there. And there also, it was my responsibility not only as a designer, but as somebody who supports authenticity to really do a deep dive into it. It took 2 years of research, about maybe museum visits to 7 or 8 museums across the world. We worked with weavers to revive those saris and create them with authenticity rather than just doing a quick fix for them. The jewelry that I designed for the film was actually made using the molds that were 400 years old and used by the jeweler who designed for the court of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. So we revived the jewelry and made it for the film. And what was the most heartening for me, I mean, the National Award was a great kind of something like a validation, but importantly, all the people who worked on the film, they got orders after that. There were inquiries for weddings. Brides wanted to wear those jewelry and those saris. So it was not only a lip service where say, hey, I am great and this is my award and what have I achieved, but it was trying to literally put your money where your mouth is and giving it back to the people who have crafted these things. Now imagine a world where there is AI, or there is mass production, or there is where we give up on the pride of being Indian and who we are and what we firmly believe in. Imagine a world which is so homogenized, where everybody looks the same and all the clothes are made in large factories with no kind of soul, no kind of emotion, no kind of heart, and more importantly, no involvement of real people whose history is put into those clothes, whose soul is put into those clothes, and the emotion is put into those clothes. What kind of a world would that be? It would be a bland world. It would be a world where there is no differentiation, where we all look homogenized like white bread in a store, where each slice of bread looks like the same. There's no differentiation really. There's no personality to those. That is what I feel is the challenge that is facing us. I mean, all of you are, a lot of the students here are in their early 20s, and as we kind of go ahead, we'll have the challenge of AI, we'll have the challenge of fast fashion, we'll have the challenge of quick fixes. I want to ask you, I want you to think over what is the contribution that all of you will make as consumers, as people, as the future of the country, to ensure that we not only protect and safeguard what we have, but we allow it to thrive. In a world where borders are dissolving and where everything is kind of the same, I mean, whether you travel today to any mall or any airport, you sometimes forget where you are because it's the same set of stores, it's the same set of music playing, it's the same set of ads. There is no localization or no local flavor at all. We cannot stop change, and change should not be stopped. Change is bound to be. What we need to do is to hold on tightly to what makes us proud as Indians, proud as a culture and our origins, and take that forward without, there's a saying that only the trees which stand stiff fall down in a storm. The trees which are flexible and adapt to the changing times are the ones that never fall. So if you see, I mean, very rarely do coconut trees fall near the coast where there are such typhoons and hurricanes. The trees that fall are the ones that are standing rigidly while being resistant to change. Change is not something that we can change, I mean, pun intended, but what we can do is we can put that into our personality. But most importantly, we need to stay proud about our identities, protect those, and make sure that we really cherish and safeguard the future, because that's what the only choice that we have. I'd like to kind of, add a little bit of this, saying that this is one of my favorite quotes, and all of you are very, very bright people, because, I mean, it's not easy to kind of separate yourself in the competitive world that India is today. Imagination is intelligence having fun, and I think what we have to do is bring a little bit more than what we see. We are more than the sum of its parts. What can we see beyond what is the obvious, what we just take for granted, and make choices that define us as people and define us as a culture. Thank you.